Hello, this is Will Faerber from Art to Ride, and today we're looking at a first submission by Christa of her horse Karisma. Karisma is an 11-year-old Nambian that she's owned since it was 2. She's been interested in doing classical dressage, as she says, but wasn't quite putting all the pieces together till she found Art to Ride, and now she seems to be doing a great job. So she's just getting started with this work. She only just started in January of this year, so she's doing a really wonderful job here for the short period of time that this has been going on. What I like about this horse, even when she kind of brings her head up a little bit, she keeps stepping with a nice big step behind. So that's really wonderful. Already you're developing a really nice swinging walk when the horse is correct. She's a little above the bridle right there, but in just a moment she's going to stretch back down like that. And that's exactly what you want to do. So at this point, all we're looking to do is find that place, that position of the horse's head and neck that allows the horse to work over its back as best it can and develop the strength of the top line. And you're doing a wonderful job with that. All right, there, really nice. So when it gets in that really long stretch, that's exactly where you want it to be. You're doing a great job of maintaining contact here, just widening your hands like that. And once again, you see people that will tell you, oh, that's not how you're supposed to ride. You have to hold your hands in this one place. Well, once again, that's riding at the end. In the beginning, we have to do whatever we have to do to get the horse going correctly and to learn to maintain contact. So later on, yes, when the horse is developed and is going absolutely correctly, then you'll hold your hands exactly where they should be, just above the withers there, and you'll have light contact and the horse will be soft. But in the meantime, in terms of teaching the horse the things that it needs to know, sometimes we have to do things a little bit differently. And just this concept of getting the horse at first just to the understanding that it can maintain contact with your hand, and that's the idea of widening your hands there, so that you can just maintain a soft, supple contact of the horse's mouth. Because if you have a long rein like we do here, if the horse suddenly pops its head up, if you don't widen your hands, there's no way to maintain contact. So that's what that's all about, and you're doing that very, very well. So while this walk is a little inconsistent at times, when it's getting there, you're really doing a great job. It's getting to a really nice place, and as I said with this horse, what I really like about it, especially for a horse with as big of a dip as behind the saddle on this one, she keeps stepping quite nicely behind and doesn't have the stiff, straight hind leg look that a lot of Arab-type horses have. A lot of them, especially older types, or the ones from the 80s and 90s, you might say, became very, very straight behind in the way they were breeding them, even worse than they used to be. But this one has a pretty nice step to it. You see it gets a little slow there, and watch what happens. As soon as it does slow down and bring its head up, you can see how the hind legs just kind of fall out behind. There's no more any flexion, any in the hocks, that is, and the leg becomes very stiff. But as you stretch it down like that, we can see how that step becomes deep under the body. So what you're doing here is very correct. You're well on your way to having this right. It's a little slow right there, and that's where you'd like to ask it to increase the intensity or the speed there and the length of the step and the activity. Once again, as we see the horse in silhouette there, you can see that weak point behind the back there where the back is dropped. And if you had continued to not improve that, that's where kissing spine begins right there. And sadly, as we see around the world, this has become an epidemic. And for one reason alone, that people don't have the information that they need on how to train horses correctly. Everyone's trying to do it too fast. And of course, they're all imitating these top riders, which is the sad thing, because these top riders can afford to burn out horse after horse after horse. And really, when one talks about how good a rider is or is not, the real proof is in how long the horses last. And that is how long they last without injections and these kinds of things that keep them limping along for a while. That so many top horses, if they weren't getting injected every other day, they would not be sound enough to go in the ring. And that's due to the way that they're riding. But unfortunately, people, who don't know that and don't know what goes on really behind the scenes, they watch these people and they try to imitate them because they see them winning in the show ring. And of course, for people, who can't afford to go buy another $100,000 horse every 6 months or whatever, they just go through the horses that they have, and that's the end of it. So as I said, the best gauge of a horseman is how long their horses last without being pasted together with help. But this is really coming along very, very nicely. Really, for your just beginning this in January, you're doing a very good job here. And I really like the looks of this horse. Really has a nice long top line, which we want to see. A lot of the Arab type horses are just too short in the back and very straight behind, and can be a very difficult training wise. But then at the end of the day, there's not a lot there at the end of the day to put that much time into. So this one looks really, really good. I'm really liking how this horse is just really long over the top line, and I think you'll be able to improve this horse very quickly from what I see here so far. Good stretch in the walk there. And you can so clearly see what a difference it makes when the horse does this correctly, when the walk was right there. Now, what I would have done there was waited till you got the walk. Even if you only get it for a moment, don't start your trot until you get the horse all the way there. You had better moments that you could have started the trot from, but that's not a big deal once we get into it. It's whether the horse gets there or not. But always try to go from the most correct walk, in other words, into the trot. So I would try to get the horses long and take a little more time getting the horse stretching out and a little more active. It was interesting there because it seemed like you started off really quite well, and I don't know that you were getting ready to trot, but it was not as good just before you went into the trot work as the walk had been kind of in the very beginning of the tape there. So getting into the trot work here, you're getting some good steps here, kind of like the walk. It's up and down, but you're certainly on your way to getting there. I would have spent more time in the walk myself. I would like to see the walk more consistent before you go to the trot, and I think that's the biggest part of your problem there. If you go to the trot before the horse is really consistent and still going up and down the way this one was doing, if you get to the trot, you're pretty much going to get the same thing. So I would also like to see, this horse looks to me, and I don't know if you're doing any lunging work in hand work, but that's really where you ought to go to get this more consistent before you go on. I'd love to see you lunging the horse, doing some work in hand, that sort of thing, to get the horse a little more prepared for this. Looks like a horse that maybe could be helpful to put a shambone on for a little bit, just to get the horse stretching and more consistent over its back before you ride. But just like the walk work, you're having some wonderful moments here in the trot where you're actually getting there. And I like how you're getting the horse active there, swinging across the diagonal there. You're not trying to pull the head down or anything. But all I'm saying is that this would be a lot easier if you had the horse more consistent in the walk before you went to the trot. So I'm just saying, I just don't think you were quite prepared enough to go into the trot work a little too soon there. I'd like to see them, because what we don't want to do is spend a lot of time here going up and down and up and down. We want to, when we take the horse to the trot, hopefully be at a place where the horse is ready to be a little more consistent over its back, so that we're not doing a lot of bad steps, if you want to look at it that way. So the goal in correct training is to do as little wrong as possible. That is, ride the horse as little as possible upside down. So you see here the horse has gotten quite hollow. Now it starts to come back into a trot again. You get a little better stretch coming through that corner, but then it pops back up again, and then it's back down again. So you're having moments that are really good. I just think that you need a little more prep for your trot work so that you're not spending quite so much time with the horse not in as good a frame as would be possible. So I'd love to see you in your next submission. Go back and see this horse on the lunge line and see what that looked like. I'd like to see you doing some work in hand to getting the horse to stretch more active. But you did the right thing there by coming back to the walk, so that you came back to the walk instead of just went on and on and on, with the horse not the way you want it to be in the trot work. So, and that's exactly what you want to do. If you get frustrated with something, or any time that we run into a difficulty with the horse, instead of trying to push our way through that difficulty and maybe injuring the horse in the process, what we like to do is just come back to what came before it and get that a little more consistent, and then go back to the trot. So you did just the right thing. I certainly wouldn't have liked to have seen you gone on and done any more trot work than that without coming back to the walk and getting it more consistent. So that's just what you want to do. So you can always test things. We test the waters, but we never try to fight our way through them, so to speak, if we're not prepared. So we just come back and do what we can do correctly, and coming back to the walk was just the thing to do here. Now your position, all that looks quite good. Not seeing anything wrong there. course, always a good idea to check your saddle fit, but I can't really see that from here. I'm not seeing anything that looks glaring that I can see from here that's creating a problem. But you have a good position on the back of the horse. You know, your legs in the right place, and you look pretty balanced. So all that's good. In other words, it looks like you ride well enough to be able to do what you're trying to do here. That is, you know, you can't train a horse from its back unless you are physically fit enough and you have trained enough to be able to keep your aids independent of the horse. In other words, your balance independent of the horse's mouth, which you did a good job of. Now here, you're just kind of stepping over. I would try to do, at this point, I would do transitions from the trot into the canter and not try to do the canter. Now, the horse did a transition from the walk. It just wasn't a very good one. However, this horse does not canter badly, so this is a pretty good canter here. Of course, we want to see the horse stretching more actively. But interestingly enough, the horse is about the same in the canter as it is in the walk and the trot. It's just a little bit inconsistent, but you're getting a lot of the right things done. So this canter is a good enough canter that I could say you can canter this horse to some effect, and it's a good thing that the horse, that he's not so hollow that, you know, it simply can't canter at all. But you can see there as you went on there that the horse got a little hollower towards the end of that long side, and then you came back to the trot. He was pretty hollow by the time you came back to the trot. So once again, you don't want to do a lot of transitions with the horse at this level till it's consistently over its back, and really just kind of go back to the beginning with what you're doing there, and just try to get everything a little more consistent before you go on to the next thing, rather than just doing, you know, a little bit that's sort of halfway there and a little more that's halfway there. So I'd love to see another submission from you in which I see you lunge this horse. I would suggest in long side reins or a shambone if you have one of those, to see what she does there. Now, of course, as soon as we can get a horse to stretch on the lunge without any of those things, that's what we do. But in the beginning, sometimes we need the shambone or the long side reins to teach the horse to stretch into the contact. But you're doing a very good job here of what you're doing, and you're getting some really good steps. It's just that there's too much inconsistent between the good steps. In other words, the horse is going hollow a little too much of the time. But I love how you're at least not trying to force the horse into a frame or anything like that. You're keeping the horse moving actively. Remember, there's a difference between being active and being forward. Forward means that the horse can lift the back and engage forward into the body and be straight. Active simply means what you're doing there is just being active enough to get the horse starting to do something that we can get those changes to happen. So difference between being active and being forward. A lot of people will say forward, 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 and they're running around the arena, and that's not what it means at all. It's not forward until the horse lifts its back and engages. So we're working towards forward, and sometimes we have to get horses active in order to get them forward, if that makes any sense. So think about those things. So I'd love to see your next submission, go back and see some work in hand. I'd love to see the lunging, see that you're doing those things correctly. A lot of what you're doing here is very good. It's just that it's just a little inconsistent. So I would stick to the walk longer until you get the walk more consistent in what you're doing, and then go to the trot work. You know, nothing that you did what I would have found detrimental to the horse, and that you came right back as soon as you weren't getting it. And even the canter was good enough that, you know, the horse cantered well enough. It wasn't like it was cross cantering endlessly, this kind of thing that just destroys horses' legs. But on the other hand, it was interesting in the downwards transition. So don't work so much. This horse was better in the canter when you were just kind of going and leaving it alone. And at that point, of course, you want to keep your seat also light in the canter. I noticed that in that downwards part of that transition, you were sitting kind of heavy in the back. I think that's what caused the horse to come a little hollow there on that last long side in that canter. So think about those things. You're on a great start here, though. You've really done a great job with this horse. And it's a lovely horse. I really love to see what this one develops into. So keep up the great work. And I look forward to seeing your next one. For only doing this since January, you've done a wonderful job, and this horse is going to really come around for you beautifully. I'm not sure where you are there, but great to meet you, and we look forward to seeing your next submission. Welcome to Art to Ride.